We've got limited editions, colorful limited editions, new versions of old watches, and a special guest, so stick around to the end. This is A Week in Watches, episode 62, your wiki look back at the people, watches, and stories from the industry. My name is Blake Bettner, I'm the managing editor of Worn & Wound, and I'll be your host this week. Before we jump in, this week's episode is brought to you by Worn & Wound Plus, our own Slack community. This is a Slack community that's open for you to join, and it's free to join. All you have to do is sign up for our mailing list. We'll have more details on that shortly. All right, we're starting off this week with some news from Seiko and Grand Seiko. We'll jump in with Grand Seiko, who has a trio of new US exclusive watches inspired by the Katana blade. These are two regular production references as well as one limited edition reference, the SBGA 489, 491, and 493. Those first two feature a black and green dial that gets a really beautiful, subtle stipple texture underneath the color. The 493, that's the limited edition version, is a red, fiery dial with more of a fiery texture emanating from the center of the dial. It's very dramatic. This is built on the 44GS platform in a 40mm case that measures 12.5mm thick. These use the 9R65 spring drive movement with 72 hours of power reserve. This is the movement that famously or infamously, depending on your point of view, puts the power reserve indication at the bottom of the dial. It does kind of break into that texture a little bit, but at this point, it's one of those signature details of these watches. You might love it, you might hate it. It is what it is at this point. The pricing on these Grand Seiko SBGA 489 and 491 references, which are the non-limited references, is $5,600, and the price on the SBGA 493 limited edition to 500 units is $6,000. Moving on, we've got a new Seiko, a new King Seiko. They're slowly building out their modern King Seiko range. This is a reference SJE095. This uses that slightly redesigned case. It's 38.6 millimeters in diameter. It's 10.7 millimeters thick. It has the in-house movement 6L35. This watch is also known as the chrysanthemum. How fun is that word to say? I love saying this. Chrysanthemum, this is a flower considered lucky in Japanese culture. This has this faceted dial that's meant to evoke the feeling of the chrysanthemum flower. It's really beautiful. It's done in an off-white kind of beigey color that works really well with either the steel bracelet or the beige strap. This latest King Seiko is a limited edition of 600 units, and it is priced at $3,400. They do make a more entry-level King Seiko. We've got more details on this full collection at Worn & Wound. We'll leave a link to that down below. Now moving on to another more colorful limited edition, we have a new watch from Zenith. This is the Defy 21 Chromo. This is the Chromo II. We actually saw the first edition of this last year, and they're bringing it back in a black and a white style. It's got the rainbow colors built into the dial and the movement itself. The dial itself is open work, so you see a lot of these colors kind of come through in interesting ways underneath the dial plate, as well as the stitching on the rubber strap. These are both limited to 500 pieces. Both of these watches use the high-frequency El Primero 9004. And what I love about the movement here in the Zenith Defy 21 is the chronograph, which can time down to a 100th of a second, uses its own escapement and mainspring. So you're actually winding a separate barrel for the chronograph, and the power reserve for that chronograph is at 12 o'clock on the dial. Really cool feature here. The chronograph itself is also pretty extreme. Starting it up, you'll see the timing seconds hand whip into motion at a rate that is nearly impossible to keep track of to the human eye, well, to my eye at least. Both of these limited editions are sized at 44 millimeters and again are limited to 500 units. They are priced at $15,600. Before we move ahead, a word from this week's sponsor, the Worn & Wound Plus Slack community. This is a growing community that discusses all things watches. You can make content suggestions to us. You have access to us. We jump in to discuss our thoughts on the latest watches that we're reviewing. We even give early access previews of some of the reviews that we're working on. There's even a marketplace channel where members of the community buy and sell their own watches, and there's been some pretty incredible watches to show up there so far. You can join easily by signing up for our newsletter, which will grant you access for free to the Worn & Wound Plus community. For more details on this, click the link right here. Hope to see you there. All right, next up we have a new release from Christopher Ward. This is actually a new version of a watch that's already been released. Remember the 12 that was released just not that long ago, actually, earlier this year? This is our integrated sport watch that was sized at 40 millimeters, offered in steel and titanium, and a few colorful dials. Well, now this watch is available in 36 millimeters. It's offered in 4 dial colors, from light green, light blue, dark blue to silver with some gold accents. This is still using the Sellita SW200 movement, and it's still under 10 millimeters in thickness, according to Christopher Ward. So they haven't really had to compromise the wearability of the case. The new lug-to-lug measurement is 40.8 millimeters, so if you found the new one just a little bit wide around the wrist, a little bit bracelet-like, or if you have just a smaller wrist in general, this is a great option for you. This is still offered on that integrated bracelet, and it also comes on a quick change rubber strap as well. Now, at the moment, this is only being offered in steel, so there's no titanium version available here. This new version is priced at $995 on the rubber strap and $1,225 on the steel bracelet. We've got more details on this watch at Worn and Wound, and we've got a live hands-on look at the watch coming soon. Next up, we have news from Timex, who released a new Giorgio Galli S2 watch. This is a more minimal take on the Giorgio Galli design, which brings a full black, rather dramatic dial to the mix here. It's very minimal. There's an applied ring on the inside of the dial that marks off each hour, and that's about it. This still uses the open work design steel case that I really love. It's a very unique feature, especially at this price point from Timex. Now, unlike the other versions, this one is using a Sellita-based SW200 movement. As a result, it's priced at $975, a little bit more expensive than the prior variations. But if you care about having a Swiss movement, you're getting a little bit more for the money. Timex calls this rich minimalism, and I have to agree. The whole thing really comes together beautifully, and I just love the design language that Giorgio Galli has brought to Timex, especially at this price point. And for our final story, we are talking about Brew and their new metric automatic. Metric is, of course, a family that we've grown to really love around here. It's always been available with quartz movements, and as of this week, you can now get it with an automatic movement. Joining us to discuss this new metric, we have a special guest, Mr. Jonathan Ferrer. Jonathan, thanks for joining us today. Tell us about the new metric automatic.
Well, first, thank you for having me, Blake. This is awesome. We had our morning coffee. We're here. We're talking watches. So today I am wearing the metric automatic watch. Just released this. 36 millimeter width by 41.5. So it's like really compact, easy to wear.
Yeah, this is beautiful. This is a limited edition too, right off the bat?
Yeah. So I don't typically do limited editions, but I'm noticing more and more people are interested in something a little bit more special that's not for everybody, not something that's going to be produced forever. So thinking about the collector, this piece came out.
Okay, excellent. I really love the red lollipop seconds hand there. Is there anything particular that you look to for inspiration on the design of this watch?
Yeah. So I look at a lot of vintage watches from like the 60s and 70s, like no particular specific watch, but you pick up on different cues of these older watches. One of the most distinctive things that I noticed was that lollipop hand. Yeah. And it's so funny whether it's a silhouette of a case or the silhouette of a simple second hand, that literally brings that watch to an era.
Yeah, it's the small details that matter.
That's it.
But at the same time, it doesn't. It's got its own kind of unique identity, like all of the metric watches have had before this. The metric watch is a watch that we've gotten to know quite well here over the last couple of years, and it's really had some beautiful colorways. Can we expect anything like that to come into the automatic version that we have here? Not to put you on the spot.
Nothing just yet,
okay.
But that's funny that you say it, because color is something that I think we all enjoy more and more, especially at Worn and Wound. Yeah. So something that we want to explore more of. There might be some color maybe later this year, actually in the near future. Okay. Maybe not in this automatic version, but in its own special.
More colorful metrics though.
There's something colorful coming out soon.
Okay.
Yeah. Not in this particular dynamic set, but something colorful coming. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to hear that, John. And finally, what is this priced at?
So this is at $525 US dollars. So very reasonable for the make and design of the watch. Yeah. And that's one of the things I always say. It's exclusive inclusivity, where it's highly attainable for those that know, and then it's exclusive in that we don't make a million of these, and everyone we really put the care into making sure it's designed perfect to spec and hand delivered as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the watch turned out beautifully. Congratulations on the launch. And for more details on this and everything Brew, you can visit Brew.
Brewwatches.com.
Brewwatches.com. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Blake. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. And until next time.
Sounds good.
Yeah.